Inching ever closer to the college basketball season. It is less than 5 weeks away before there is tip-off with regular season games. I'm Dan Dickau, your host on the WCC Weekly for Gonzaga Nation Media Network. If you've been listening recently, you've seen that every Monday leading up to the season, we are taking a look at a WCC opponent outside of Gonzaga, giving you a little bit of a breakdown of what their season may look like, some of the pieces they've lost, some of the pieces that are returning, maybe a newcomer or two, and also take a quick overview of their schedule. Today's Pepperdine, the Waves out of Malibu, California, led by head coach Lorenzo Romar in his second stop on the Pacific Coast Highway 101. Got off to a great start in his second tenure at Pepperdine, but last year hit some rough patches, and a lot of it was because with all of the activity in the transfer portal as well as the grad transfer exceptions that are out there, you've got a chance to hit some home runs. You've got a chance to have a couple that don't work. And unfortunately for Pepperdine, they took a couple chances on grad transfers a season ago that just didn't work. One of them was off the team by the time they really got into the deep part of their non-conference. The other one didn't last much longer. So when you looked at last year, there was a ton of promise. They had a great young kind of nucleus coming in Houston Millet, Maxwell Lewis, Mike Mitchell Jr., along with a returning solid player in Zedek, and then you throw in a couple experienced grad transfers. You started to like what you might have building, and it didn't work out with the grad transfers. Now you're throwing all of the responsibility on the young freshman group, and you're throwing a lot more responsibility on Zedek than he ever had. And that's kind of a recipe, I don't want to say for disaster, but for a struggle of a season. They went 7-25 last year, 1-15 in the WCC. With that youth comes a learning curve of how to win, both at home and on the road. And on the road was where their struggles really happened. They were 0 on the road, didn't have a single win, either in conference or in non-conference in the road. I would expect that to change this season based on the experience level, but also the talent of the young group that they have. Defensively last year, they weren't great. They gave up about 47% field goal percentage from the opponent. So they have potential defensively. A lot of times they would gamble, which many times in Lorenzo Romar's past systems, they pressure defensively, go for steals, get out on fast break, and play that up-tempo transition style that he likes to coach. When you gamble, you don't get the steal, and you give easy opportunities to great teams such as a Gonzaga, a USF with their experienced guards a year ago, St. Mary's with how they're so patient with everything on the offensive end. It really puts you in a bind defensively, and that's, I thought, where I saw them struggle at times last year. They did try to get into a mix of not gambling as much as being solid, but it's one of those fine lines of changing the dynamic of how you coach it and how you play it during the course of the season can be difficult. They did guard the three-point line, though, okay. Forced their opponents 33% from beyond the arc, only about 7 a game. So, that's one of the important factors that so many coaches look at is taking teams off of the three-point line, driving their three-point percentage down, and then making them take contested twos in the paint. They weren't good on the glass, and a lot of it was because of the grad transfers I had mentioned. Those were, interior players. So you now put a lot of your reliance on a Zedek, who played at the 4, a little bit at the 5 a season ago, but he's a stretch 4 who wants to play on the perimeter because he can shoot it. He's got good touch. They were turnover prone at times as well. Much of that was due to the youth that they had. Mike Mitchell Jr. as a point guard as a freshman, I thought had a fabulous year, but that's placing a lot of responsibility on him to get you into offense, to score, to be a threat. So all in all, Pepperdine's got to be excited and happy to move on from last year and get the page started on a new year. Lorenzo Romar's a terrific coach. He's done great things at his stops before, whether it was Pepperdine, St. Louis, or obviously where he had a ton of success at Washington. So he knows how to do it, and we'll see if they turn the corner this year. When you look at the big losses from a season ago, I think their biggest losses probably were during that season I mentioned with the grad transfers. Sometimes they're going to work chemistry-wise, sometimes they're not, and they cut losses early. But the biggest loss that I see from the end of season team to this year is in having a little bit of experience at the college level with the Pepperdine system, would be Victor Obiaha. And he wasn't a great scorer. That's not what he was relied upon, but he was an interior presence who gave them great length. Averaged about 2 offensive rebounds per game, led them in offensive rebounds, led them in blocks a season ago, was active on the glass, had good lateral movement in guarding situations, whether it was on the perimeter and switches or pick and rolls. So I think that's really the biggest loss. But when you look at everything else that's coming back, they didn't have a lot of losses from end of season till now, which is a great thing to build upon. The key pieces that they have returning, they had a trio of great wing players who were all freshmen last year. Houston Millet is kind of a wing. I consider him more of a traditional 2-guard where he really hunts his shot. He's aggressive coming off screens. He's aggressive finding angles in space to be able to get his shot off. He led them in scoring as a freshman, almost 14 points a game. Did a really nice job of handling that load and that pressure as a young player to be able to score. I would expect a jump in growth as far as efficiency, because when you're placing a lot of responsibility on a freshman, such as they did last year to score it, and you haven't been through the trials and tribulations of understanding how you're getting guarded at this level, how you're getting officiated at the college level, how you're getting prepared for it, and then how you can adjust to be more efficient and to be more prepared and to be ready. I think that's going to be interesting to watch. The other wing that shows a ton of promise for Pepperdine missed a number of games at the start of the season due to some NCAA eligibility questions. Would be Maxwell Lewis. Great size at the wing, about 6'8", long, athletic. There was some talk of him possibly going to the NBA G League out of high school or the Overtime Elite, trying to speed up his eligibility for the NBA clock. He's got that type of talent. He's not there yet, but when you look at size, athleticism, he's got good enough ball skills. He's got good enough shooting ability that you've got to at least project it out that way, and I think he's got a chance. But in 21 games last year, averaged about 11 points a game, shot it well from the 3-point line, about 2 made threes per game, so good enough to keep the defense honest. But I think right now where he's best as a young player is out in transition with his athleticism, his length, his ability to finish. I think that's where his strength lies. And then the third freshman from a season ago, who was obviously a sophomore, touched on him earlier. Point guards always have a lot of responsibility. And as a freshman in college, that is a huge transition to have to learn the college game from your position, but also from the totality of the team's position of what needs to be done, and then what each individual on the floor is also responsible for. But I thought Mike Mitchell did a tremendous job last year. Averaged about 9 points a game, nearly 5 assists, shot at over 40% from 3. Colby Ross from Pepperdine a couple of years back, who's carving out a nice professional career. He's a borderline NBA player. Mike Mitchell Jr. reminds me a lot of him. A lot of the same attributes: competitive, smart. You could tell he's got an understanding of the game. So I think he's going to be a difficult assignment for anybody in the WCC over the next couple of years. Other big time returning player who could really put the ball in the basket and score for the Waves, Jan Zedek, kind of that stretch four, quick trigger on the perimeter. You give him a space, he's finding a way to get that shot off. So average over 13 a game. They're going to need more from him, though, in regards to rebounding, in regards to defense. And I think that's possibly going to be a key for their season, because if those young guys improve the way that you think they could or will or should, how does Jan Zedek blend into that offensive attack? It'll be interesting to see. When you look at the newcomers, there's two newcomers that really caught my eyes in regards to I think they could have a big role for Pepperdine this year. And it's both because of they've got size. One of them's got a great pedigree. Another one's got a great background of school where he transferred from, but also potential. The first one I'll talk about is the one I think that's got great potential, and that's USC transfer 6'10" Boubacar Coulibaly. I had a game or two of USC last year, and then just watching the Pac-12. He's a guy that I thought maybe could have gotten more minutes, but USC's been loaded the last few years with the Mobley brothers, with Drew Peterson kind of at that wing. So he really hasn't had a crazy amount of opportunities, but I like the potential that I saw. He's long, he's rangy, he's athletic. I think his skill set and his IQ have grown over his time at USC. And you put him now in the WCC, and you put him in a position where it looks like at Pepperdine he's going to have a chance to play extended minutes. I think he could be a really nice piece for Pepperdine. And the other big coming in as freshman, 6'10", Javon Porter out of Missouri. The name might be familiar. His older brother, Michael Porter Jr., plays in the NBA for the Denver Nuggets. The family is really well connected, great family friends with Lorenzo Romar. Michael Porter Jr. had committed to play for Lorenzo Romar at the University of Washington before, unfortunately, Romar was fired. But that relationship stands. Javon Porter, 6'10", talented. You've seen in articles, he's made comments where he has aspirations to be in the pros, just like his older brother. And one of the reasons he chose Pepperdine outside of the family relationship with Romar is the fact that Romar has coached multiple pros over the course of his year and feels like he can get him ready the best. So lots of pieces returning, as well as newcomers for Pepperdine to keep an eye on. Moving to the schedule, last year mentioned 0 wins on the road. So sometimes what do you do if you're able to, not being stuck in contracts where you have to go play games? What you try to do is have a heavy slate of home games in the non-conference. And you see that with Pepperdine, but you also see they don't travel out of the LA area more than 2 times before they get into conference play. The 2, I guess, road trips would be at Grand Canyon, who's a really good team out of the WAC. And then they travel to the Diamond Head Classic at the University of Hawaii, where they open with Hawaii right around the Christmas time. But okay schedule. I think there's a couple in there that, are confidence builder type games, but then there's a couple, because you've got so many schools at the Division I level in the LA area, that you can kind of pick and choose and get plenty of games easily onto your schedule that kind of cover a lot of the bases that you're trying to cover when you're scheduling. Whether it's play this style, play against a team with that style, play a team from that league, looking at your KenPom, your possible net rankings, and how it may impact and affect you at the end of the year if you're possibly on the border of the NCAA tournament. But they will host your UC Irvine, which has been really good in recent years. They play at UCLA. I already mentioned they play at Grand Canyon. And then they host a really good team out of the Mountain West, Nevada. Nevada struggled last year, even though they had a lot of talent. But Steve Alford always has a good team wherever he's at, and now he's at Nevada. Look into the West Coast Conference slate. They have Gonzaga twice. They actually open their conference season at Gonzaga on New Year's Eve, December 31st. Then they also host the Zags February 18th. Get a little bit of a break in the schedule in that they only play St. Mary's once. That's one of the things that everybody looks at kind of with this split shortened conference schedule is which teams do you only play once? And for Pepperdine, to play St. Mary's once is a little bit of a help. But again, you don't want to rely on the schedule help. You want to rely on your own play. And I think Pepperdine has a chance to be much better this year than they were last year. So appreciate you listening. Thanks for taking a minute and kind of listening to all of our WCC previews on the Gonzaga Nation Media Network. We will keep rolling through the rest as we get to the start of the college basketball season. Don't forget to follow us on social media channels at Gonzaga Nation SI. Take care, and we'll see you again soon.